How about that? Holy crap, we have 3 viewers according to this screen over here. Welcome, all 3 maybe real people out there. Today we're going to have a discussion quickly because I keep screwing up all the live streams with bad, I'm sorry if it's pixelated. I'm sorry if it seems the sound isn't okay. I keep screwing up every live stream with some mistake. So I just thought we'd have a general quick discussion, maybe a half an hour or so, about some flight test airplanes that I've built and the modifications I've made to them. So let me grab the first one. We'll go from the most recently built and not at all flown, not yet maidened. This one is a FliteTest Explorer like craft, and the modifications that I made to it were the carbon fiber boom, replacing a rectangular foam board boom, and obviously it's, well, if you know the Explorer, it's kind of like a the foam board version of a Bixler. That's what the word I'm looking for. The pusher. Center motor pusher. So this has a twin setup. It has differential thrust. It has two 2830 1000 kV motors. It has 30 amp old quad Velotech Magic ESCs that I got from Buddy RC. It has full iNav flight controller, Maytech F411 WSE. And so what did I do to it? I cut the height of the fuselage. Oh, now I have 0 viewers. Wow, I had 3 whole viewers and now back to 0. Oh well. Okay, well, I don't care. This is for my own documentation anyway, and maybe someone will find it interesting. Maybe not. What can I say? Okay, so the modifications, as I was saying, is I redesigned the fuselage to just be less tall by 40 millimeters, and you can see that in the difference of the nose height. So when I first made this twin, I should say that this wing has flown before. These motors have flown. This whole tail section was on a FliteTest Explorer fuselage, basically stock except for the nose. The nose I made bigger to accommodate a big giant battery way out in front, because I needed more tail weight, more nose weight, because of the tail heavy design of this thing. So you can see the difference in height. That's about 40 millimeters. Whoa, crash. There goes my perfectly good FPV pod. That's a little crash proof, I hope. So there's 40 millimeters taken off the height of this, and I hope that makes it fly a little better. If I get it balanced right, when I had the original FliteTest Explorer fuselage, I crashed it. I put on my goggles once after launching it. Auto launch, it doesn't seem to have enough power like my wing that we'll get to, hopefully, if I don't babble on too long. Anyway, so this is supposed to be about the modifications I've made to them. So clearly I've made the modification to the design of the tail with the carbon fiber rod. I don't know if that's a good idea or not. It's way heavier than a piece of foam board, I guess. And then it's got this very large assembly to hold 2 servos at the very back and hold the tail feathers on to the carbon fiber boom. And then inside of here, I should have left it this way, there's 3 3D printed pieces that fit this and then fit inside of this. So they're like right to here. That's about how far it goes in. And so I designed this 3D printed thing. These little blocks basically with holes in them. And then the 3D printed wing mount system that I use on all the FliteTest builds that I do, that I modify. That makes it, I hate using rubber bands, basically, is the thing. These motor nacelles are from the Thingiverse website, and they are for the FliteTest Tiny Trainer motor pod, I believe is what they are. And a Tiny Trainer is another plane that I've changed the design of from the FliteTest design to fit my needs. So with this, you plug in the FPV pod when you put it together. I've got a couple videos already on me assembling this thing, trying to figure out the CG and doing the first assembly. But it goes together pretty nicely so far. And I don't know, we'll see how it looks in the air. So that's the FliteTest Explorer crash. So this is my next most recent plane. And it's the FT Spear. And the modifications that I made to that are basically, well, it also has iNav and a flight controller. So I changed the whole hatch design to just have a single hatch and a big battery space without the little side walls that the that the FliteTest design has. It still has the same front pod. I just haven't cut this part out yet because I'm going to maiden it first. I don't know where that's supposed to go. Before I put an HD camera in there, that's probably a mistake. I put another secondary hatch in here. So did I say this was the FT Spear? This is the FT Spear. I should look at the comments. Are there any comments? No. Are there any viewers? No. This has a Maytech F411WSE flight controller, I believe. And so the design of this has been modified with the original FT Spear. Basically goes straight across. The fuselage goes, it follows that line. Basically the line where the top of this motor mount is. So that all this space is fuselage blocking the airflow to the prop. And I decided that for one, since I was putting this gigantic thing on here, and I know it's off center, I should have probably put the flight controller off center and the camera in the middle. But I didn't. Anyway, so my modification was to change this profile here of this to curve down and meet the rear wall, I guess, bulkhead, whatever you want to call that. So the other thing I did so I did these two door hatches differently. The ESC is over here, so I kind of put in one of my little vents. The WSE allows for 2 cameras, so here's the secondary camera. This one is on a pan tilt, which can be controlled through my sliders and my Tyrannus. This is a 3D printed pod that I designed in Fusion 360, along with this motor mount to give me a place to put this light bar. And that gives me CG issues, I'm sure. The CG is going to be way too far back on this one too. The previous plane, I have a CG issue too. So there's the GPS in there. Anyway, so this is an FT Spear. This has yet to be maidened. Yet to be maidened. I've been a little afraid of it. It's pretty big. So it's slightly modified. Oh, and this rear ring light is programmed. This is like an Adafruit 16 LED ring light, and it is programmed as a ring in iNav, and it does work. I have tested it. I have armed it and spun the motor up and get the little effects off of there. There are also lights in here, and I can't remember. Oh, and there's navigation lights in the end. Yeah. So they all light up. Anyway, so that's my slightly modified FT Spear. Let's get a dry weight on this, huh? Dry weight. We didn't get a dry... The weight of the other one with a battery is 2 kilos. Oh wait, let's zero this out. Okay. What is it? I can't read it. That's hilarious. I can't read it. Okay, let's put this further back. It's back to 0. $868 grams for the FT Spear dry weight. And if you were to fly it with this 4S, oh, so what is the power plant? I always forget to talk about the power plant. So the power plant is Sunny Sky X2216 1250 kV. So this is my favorite motor. I only have 2 of them, and I don't know when we'll be able to get them again because of all the coronavirus stuff and just everything. Supply chains are breaking. So yeah, good luck getting one of those motors. This is an 8x6 prop, I believe. It's a Sunny Sky. You got to look in the front for the numbers. It's an 8x6. It's an 8x6 APC prop. It has a 40 amp ESC inside of here. I can't remember. It's like a hobby wing, I believe. ESC. Has a huge battery compartment. Huge, 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 huge. Easy. Look at how this is a 3300 4S, and there is just tons of room for the. And then you can put more weight. If I need nose weight, it's going to go up in there. And XT60 connector. Okay, boring. Okay, so now we come to the tiny trainer, and this one has been crashed. The wing is brand new, but the fuselage has been crashed a couple times. Let's weigh. The dry weight on this one is 544 grams. And I know that these are heavier than your typical FliteTest airplane. I tape everything on all my planes, have tape covering, and I use this kind of tape. The Tape Brothers, I don't know if you remember Experimental Airlines channel. Anyone out there? He had made a lot of foam. It's now called Tesla Details is the name of his channel. And why he didn't start a new channel, I don't know. But he didn't start a new channel. So now all his Tesla videos are mixed up with all his old Experimental Airline videos. And that's Ed from Experimental Airlines. Got me turned on to Tape Brothers. You can get these at Amazon, all different colors. So that's like the red tape there. Then I also use magic marker to color. So like on this one, that's all magic marker. Sharpie. This is all Sharpie. Oh, another modification for this one was my special 3D printed eye mount for the VTX camera. Another specialty for me, for my plane. Okay, so anyway, tiny trainer, 544 grams empty weight. This one, you can put this FPV pod on top of it. Again, with my fixed wing planes, I've made a mount, 3D printed mount system. It comprises of two pieces that get bolted together. And I've basically made one for that plane up there too. So I make whatever shape I need to make. This one also has, so this differs. This is different from the tiny trainer in that it's a one-piece fuselage. And the battery goes in the bottom. That's one thing FliteTest did horribly on this plane and planes like the FT Aero. Several of their designs, I think, didn't allow for the battery. They just didn't. In fact, the whole video, the build video, would go through, and then you would not, they would not show you where the battery went, what size they used, where it was for CG. They just gloss over that part. And for the tiny trainer, it had a whole different design in the front. So the front fuselage slid onto the back fuselage. And the way there had reinforcement here, another thickness of reinforcement. So anyway, this one allows you easily to fit, I fly it usually with a 1500 3S, but you can easily fit a 2200 3S in there. That's the biggest battery you can put, but you can shove it way in there. The CG's good with the battery, just with the front of the battery like about here. I've designed this in Fusion 360 3D printed mount that allows me, it has nut catchers in the back, so it allows me to mount the motor and change the motor. In the original tiny trainer, you had these pegs and whatever. Okay, I don't like the motor pod concept from FliteTest, so I eschew that anyway. I don't use the motor pods. Most of my planes have my own designed 3D printed motor pods, or some of them have had ones that I've gotten off of Thingiverse before I was able to design my own. So this is the tiny trainer. I also don't put the rear servos in the fuselage. I do it in the back with shorter rods and full adjustability. What else do I do differently? I made everything on this a little bit bigger. So I made all the surfaces. This is like maybe 10 millimeters higher, and this is maybe 20 millimeters wider. and maybe 10 or 20 deeper. I just made it a little tiny bit bigger on the tail feathers. I made the rear end a little bit wider here where you finish the tail because it was too narrow and too hard to build and too easy to break. Let's see what else. Oh, the wing is 160 millimeters wider. So 60 millimeters on each piece of the wing when you cut it out. So it has a little bit more lift, carrying capability. So you can put an FPV pod, and that goes right on here like this. So anyway, that's the tiny trainer. And it has FPV capabilities. I kind of like it. This is a really cool plane. I also program the ESC with motor stop, so I like to fly by, do these low flybys with no motor, no throttle, and it's all quiet, and you can hear the wind going through the wings. You know, that kind of stuff is kind of one of the reasons I like to fly line of sight. So this thing flies line of sight, and it flies FPV, and it's a fun plane. So that's the tiny trainer. I think we have one more. And it goes on a hook on the wall, which I have to put properly. No, I can't seem to hook it on the wall today. There, it's hooked on the wall. Okay, so I have two of these things. And so far, these are my favorite planes. And they are FliteTest arrows, basically. But they have been modified with a wide center pod, and I've done a couple videos, I think, on this one. At least there's a flight video of this on my channel if anyone cares. So this is the second one of these I've built. It has also a Maytech 411 WSE in there. It has a secondary camera. This one has the OLED screen. It has a 3D printed pod and little scoop thing. This is the first version of this. That's probably the third version. Actually, this is the first version of the pod. I have a newer version now that the next time I build one of these, I've got it all printed out and ready to go. I've made some improvements to the pod with nut catcher. This one's really hard to take the motor out once you put it together. I've also made a second version where you use the full wing, the full arrow wing. This one, you cut the arrow wing on the FliteTest plans where the secondary lines are for the center pod cut, if that makes any sense. There's two ways to make the arrow wing. One is with the center pod and one is without. And actually the wing top surface goes all the way. And so what I end up doing for this one is cutting it at the center pod all the way through on both sides, both pieces of foam board here. There's also some lights in there, some lights in the front, FPV in the front. There's a little FPV, a secondary 3D printed part there. The R9 receivers in the, let's turn it this way. It's in the fin here, or the winglet. I added these center winglet stabilizer whatever thingies. I don't know if it makes any difference. It does seem to have less waggle than this one, this other FT Aero wide pod. So the FT Aero is another awesome plane that FliteTest that Josh Bixler designed, but the battery situation in the room in the center pod is just ridiculously bad. It's not well thought out. And the center of gravity situation is bad too. So this one has two, like all my flight test planes, it seems to have too low of too far back weight. So the CG, it doesn't balance on the CG. It's a little tail heavy. But so you put in a little extra reflex. This looks like way too much. It must have gotten banged in the hangar. But you put in about that much reflex. About that much. I can't seem to get it right. But you do have a certain amount of reflex in there. About that much. No, that's too much too. Okay, I'm going to stop messing with that. It doesn't fly as good as an AR wing or anything like that. It's a flying brick. But this thing is my most flown plane. This one and this one, these two arrows. I fly these more than anything else. So this arrow has been bashed to shit. It is got a hook for a bungee launch, and I used to not be able to throw it and launch it, so I built a bungee launcher just to launch this thing and to help my friend launch his Optera. But this is the first version of the center pod, and it's really thick and heavy and printed with too many walls, and it's a brick. It's a giant brick. It has the whole motor pod integrated into it, which the other one does too. What am I saying? So it has a stabilizer in there, one of those NX3s that you get from Banggood for real cheap. Anyway, so these are the modifications I made to this arrow, and this thing has had the shit beat out of it. Both wings have been replaced at least once, and yet I have crashed it and smashed it, and this part has busted off across here. It has two wood spars that fortunately haven't broken yet. So the back wood spar goes all the way to about where it hits the foam board spar here, and the front wood spar goes all the way across like that. You can see it there. So that that is a beater. This is a beater plane. I mean, you can bash the shit out of this thing and it will keep on flying. It will keep on flying. That's all I can say. This motor gets really hot. It's a 28, 26, 2200 kV, and this prop is a 7x6. I think it's a 7x5. 7x5 on this one. On the iNav Arrow, I have the Sunny Sky 2208S. I don't know what that means. I don't seem to be able to find those anywhere, but Buddy RC used to have them on special. It has an APC 7x5 prop also, I believe. And it is probably a little underpowered, I suppose, but it's still got plenty of power. And it auto launches perfectly. It's had the ESC replaced by this crappy Racer Star quad ESC that's in here under this little air scoop. And it did introduce a lot of video noise when I added that. When I had one of those Velotech Magic 30 amp ESCs from way back from 2014 when I first was building quads, and that thing finally died. It would desync on auto launch all the time. So I finally tore it out. I put in this Racer Star. That's what the label looked like. And it does add a lot of video noise. So I need to go back and get a plain ESC, because even though I have all that, I have two capacitors on here, two Panasonic low ESR 1000 microfarad 35 volt capacitors on the power leads, one on the power lead going in from the battery, one on the power lead going out to the ESC on the Maytech board. Still video noise, and it was only introduced when I added this ESC. It has a GPS, it has lights. I think I said that already. Okay, so that's about it. My FliteTest plane modification. Now this one isn't a FliteTest plane. This is the last plane we'll talk about. Unless I get some comments or something, we'll just end it at this point. This has another one of those FPV pods on it. Like this fits the same size. It's got two sets of holes, so it fits on the tiny trainer too. So this is kind of like a what do I call this? This is the mini. Can't remember what it's called. Anyway, Andrew Newton did a foam board version or a box version or something of this in Depron. And so I took his dimensions and made this. And this particular one, this wing has flown, but not this fuselage. I had to build a new fuselage after crashing the hell out of one. So it's like a Sky Hunter, I think that's what it would be called. This one also has one of those 2826 Turnigy 2200 kV motors, and it's got this crazy badass quad bullnose prop from 2014. I have a shit ton of these kind of props, so I figured I might as well use it on this. It has 3D printed engine mount there. It has an exit air scoop and an entrance air scoop, and it has this is when you stick the battery right in there, and there's plenty of room for a 1500 3 cell is what I usually fly on this, or just a 1000 3 cell. This one has yet to be flown, so I've shown you 3 planes that I haven't even flown yet. That's like horrifying. So this one either needs, I need to add a bungee hook to this one and bungee it, because I can't seem to launch it. Doesn't have a stabilizer, no flight controller or anything, and it is crazy. It flies crazy. Like the previous version of this, I mean, I flew it, but obviously I crashed it too. I have flown it and not crashed it, but usually it ends in a crash of some sort. Okay, so that's it for my... Oh, and I tried the experimental airlines technique, the arm and wing technique on this wing instead of the FliteTest wing, where you have the facets. What do I have to say about that? Well, I ended up with a lot of extra kind of overhang here because I did my own dimensions on this, trying to match what Andrew Newton did. So this also has my wing mount here. I designed a wing mount for this tapered edge, and anyway, it's not exactly a FliteTest plane. I don't think FliteTest has anything like this, but it's like a micro Sky Hunter clone attempt, and it's not nearly as fast as a micro Sky Hunter, and it flies crazy. But it can fly. I'll put together some DVR footage. That's all I have, because I don't have HD footage of anything at this point, but I'm going to work on that too. Okay, so that was it. That's it. Or as the Tetrich brothers would say, this is it. This is it. That was my overview of my modified FliteTest designs. I think that I love FliteTest because they have really, I don't know if I'd be flying RC planes. I might just be doing quads, because they lowered the barrier to entry for somebody that is mechanically adept. I mean, I can build stuff. I can build things with wood making things. I can build things with programming tools and write code. I can fix cars and build bicycles and do electronic solder electronic components and stuff. So I think that the FliteTest videos, and I'm going way back, and for me way back is 2014. I think that they really made it. I'm going to hold the plane while I do this. Well, they really made it easy to get into this. And so I would sit and watch their videos at the time. This is like 6 years ago now. I'd watch their videos and watch them, and then I finally went out and bought foam board, and then I finally set up a table with my tiny little cutting mat, and I finally cut my first pieces from patterns. And the first pieces I ever made were FT Aero wings. And I took them and then I experimented. I was thinking about the whole big picture, even from the very beginning, like how I was going to finish them. Because I didn't want to I knew I would be crashing them into mud and stuff, so I didn't want to have unfinished foam board. I wanted it to look good, even though if I never saw it in the air, I don't know. So I looked into lacquering foam board, which I'm still going to do, by the way, at some point again. That works out pretty well. I'd like to do a series on that and see about finishing these things. But these are finished just with Sharpie and then packing tape. This kind of packing tape, Scotch storage, and it's very heavy tape, probably too heavy, but it adds to the strength a lot, and it adds to the shiny factor of it, and so I like it. I like covering it with tape. And the black tape, I use this Tape Brothers colored tape for, like, that's not Sharpie, that's black tape. That's Sharpie on that side. So this is a wing from one plane. This is a wing I probably made like 6 or 8 months later after I broke the wing that used to be with this side. This side I think was a replacement for the first wing. This plane has been through everything. That's all I can say about this. It's a line of sight plane. I've never flown an FPV. It has a little spot for one of those Hawkeye Firefly HD cameras, which suck really bad. It has a spot for an FPV unit that I had in here. I may have tried to fly an FPV once or twice, but so I'm totally rambling at this point. But back to what I was saying, I think that the FliteTest designs, although I don't think they're perfect and I wanted to modify them, that's what they wanted you to learn in the first place, is learn how to build and learn how to do that. And I think that what they have succeeded in that greatly in my world. So that's why I made this video, is to talk about the fact that FliteTest is a good way to get into making planes. I make planes more than, I have a Tundra over there. I don't know if you can't see it in the camera. That's the first plane I ever flown that I ever bought that was like a whole plane. And then what did I do? I broke it I broke it assembling it. I cut the flap control rods thinking that they were too long, like an idiot. So in some ways I'm better at making my own planes than I am building ones that come in a box fully thought out by other people. So this is fun. This is a great experience to learn how to do this stuff with FliteTest planes, and to learn how to, inspires you to learn how to design your own 3D printed parts and to print them and to test them out and fit them together. It's really cool. It's a really cool hobby. So that's all I'm going to say. I hope everybody's staying safe and staying healthy, and we'll get hopefully out of this quarantine and get a vaccine or something at some point in the next 2 years. We'll all get together sometime in the real world, FliteTest or whatever. I'd like to go to that someday, maybe. Who knows? So, peace out, everybody. I'm going to switch this little button and say goodbye and good night.